Please welcome Politico's White House correspondent and playbook co-author, Eugene Daniels.
Hello. Hi, guys. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Eugene.
Hello. Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that. As you can see, I am alone up here, but that's okay. Governor Sununu should be popping up on one of these screens any second. There we go. Governor Sununu, how are you?
Hey, good to see you, Eugene.
Good to see
How's
you.
everything going out there?
It's very quiet trip here.
Quiet trip? Nothing's going on?
Very silent, nothing's happening.
It sounds like you've probably been sitting a lot of Milwaukee traffic or something.
Exactly. A lot of closures here, but that's okay. Governor, every time I sit down to prepare questions for you, everything changes. So we have a lot to get to, and I know you have a hard out, so I want to jump into it. You have said in the past that Joe Biden was not going to be the nominee of the Democratic Party. The momentum is shifting. I'm talking to folks and people who at one point were very gung-ho about him staying on, have even changed their tune behind the scenes. Are you feeling vindicated? Does it feel like you were right this entire time? You want to take a victory lap?
Well, no one likes an I told you so moment. No one likes an I told you so moment as much as a politician. But yeah, look, I've been saying this for well over a year. It's real, it's happening. I think what you're going to see is, obviously, this is a week of Republican unity, and I think what everyone is seeing is really positive on the Republican side. But as soon as this convention is done, around Monday morning, the whole world is going to put their cameras right on Joe Biden and say, and now what are you going to do? Because clearly the numbers aren't there. My message if I was the RNC, my message to the RNC is find someone like Frank Luntz, pay him whatever he wants, and start polling the messaging for a Kamala Harris, Andy Beshear, Kamala Harris, Josh Shapiro type ticket, because I think that's what you're going to see materialize in the next few weeks. And that is a very different race than running against Biden. And again, I think Republicans have a lot of momentum and a lot of opportunity to win big in November right now. But believe me, if and when they make this switch, everything's going to change. It's going to get very close in a lot of those tighter states. There's going to be more energy. I think the Democrat Party would effectively be rewarded, if you will, by independents for saying, hey, none of us liked that whole Biden-Trump ticket to start with. You guys had the courage to change your nominee out. And it's almost like a rewarding and a re-energizing of the party there. So there's 100 days to go. A lot is going to happen in that 100 days. And I just tell Republicans, we want to win. So you better run really hard and you better strategize for kind of those tough scenarios, while we might not see them at this very moment, that are likely to materialize in the next few weeks.
What were you seeing before everyone else, right? You talked about how you called this earlier. You politicians do like a victory lap. What were you seeing before the rest of, I guess, the Democratic Party and leadership were seeing about Biden needing to go possibly here?
Well, look, I'll just say, as a governor, I'm on the ground a lot with my constituents.
Yeah.
And we're in a pretty purple state, a pretty independent-minded state. And when you're talking to folks consistently and look at what their priorities are, it's not just a policy here and a policy there, or a party here and a party there. They want energy. They want something refreshed. They want to be heard. And again, especially in New Hampshire, the Trump-Biden ticket was nothing anybody wanted to see. And I try to connect with people on what drives them when they actually get into that voting booth. So that one thing that drives a voter is anxiety. So if people feel anxiety over inflation, over the cost of living, over rent, over the border, that's going to drive them to definitely vote against the Democrat administration at this point. And Kamala Harris is going to have to answer to that. Or Joe Biden literally can't answer for it. Kamala Harris will have to answer for it at some point. And that anxiety is showing a shift. The other thing they will vote on is new energy and optimism and just a change. They just want something that isn't the same old thing. And so I guess I'll just tell you what I saw was what voters were feeling. That's all. And I think too much in the media and the Washington elite, they just kind of talk amongst themselves in their little circles without really getting out there and trying to getting an understanding of what voters want. And then just the reality of, look, my interactions with Joe Biden have been fine. Most of them he's been on, so to say. A couple of them he wasn't on his best game. And when you're dealing with issues of dementia or getting old or whatever this might be, it was clear to me it was getting worse and worse and worse. And a year ago, you knew that a year down the road, it was just going to be, they were going to be unable to contain it, unable to hide from it anymore. So I think the Democrats have made their own problem. There's no question about that. They should have had the courage to see this, to react to it, and move on from it before now. But that doesn't mean they're not out. There's still time to do it. They got about 2 weeks to make a tough decision, get Biden where he needs to be. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure there. It's happening. And I think you're going to see a very re-energized, potentially a re-energized Democrat Party. I don't want to see it because I'm a Republican. I want to win. We all want to be running against Joe Biden. But I try to be a realist about planning and strategizing for what's going to be a pretty wild last 3 months of this campaign.
Yeah, I want to jump into, you said that when you've been with President Biden, he's been on his game and off his game at times. And the times in which he's been off his game, tell me more about what those interactions have been like.
Well, I'll say this, we've been, I was with all the governors in February at the White House, and the president came in. So physically, you could see he does the shuffling thing, right? And he's an older gentleman, and he's shuffling. He physically doesn't have it to literally get from point A to point B very well. You've seen the stubble on the stairs and all that. Mentally, when you ask him a question, what is clear is he's trying his best to regurgitate what other people told him. He wants to have a conversation, to his credit, but he's really trying hard to just regurgitate other people's answers. And you can, as anyone in a leadership position, whether you're a dad, a CEO, or a governor, you can tell when you're being given somebody else's answers. And I could tell that was not a good sign. I saw him get off a plane 2 months ago, and we made a couple of jokes. We had a nice interaction. I think he's a nice person. Disagree with pretty much every one of his policies, but he's a nice person. We had a nice interaction. But 2 months before then, again, when we were talking to governors, like he does the whispering thing a little too much, and he whispers things that don't make any sense, and you're like, boy, this is not getting any better. So that's all. It's good days and bad. I see it with, my mom has dealt with this. I saw it with my mom. I've seen it with other older individuals. So look, as a person, I feel bad for the guy. I do. Because when you get to that age and you're dealing with mental cognitive issues, you're really relying on your family and your team to help you, be the best version of yourself. And running for president is not what this gentleman should be doing right now. Whoever has been telling him and pushing him to do that, there's a responsibility to the family to give good advice, and I just don't think they've been giving him some very good advice. So he's got a legacy decision to make. He can be the Democrat that everyone remembers for moving Trump off the ballot in 2020, or the Democrat that everyone remembers that overstayed his welcome and handed it back to Republicans, which is fine by me. I would love it if Trump won, obviously, but I think that's kind of the tough discussion that some of his peers, Pelosi, Schumer, and others are having with him right now. And my sense is he'll be kind of pushed into the right decision for himself and his party in the next couple of weeks. So as Republicans, we better plan ahead.
Yeah, I know you politicians don't like to get specific, so I'm going to try again on the question of what did the president say? You talked about him whispering things that didn't make sense. Did he forget a name? Did he forget a policy of his?
No,
Did he say a number wrong?
I don't want to go into too many specifics. Yeah, here's an example. He turned to me at one point in front of everybody and said, and all that money we gave to New Hampshire for police officers, Governor, right? I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, I was polite. I didn't really say anything. I didn't want to, show him up in that moment. I didn't know what the heck the guy was talking about. He turned to the governor of Montana at one point and started talking about, some of the changing of the colors of the leaves, and was implying that it was climate change driven when it had nothing to do with that. It was some of these really awkward moments about specific things that he was trying to get specific on, but clearly didn't know what he was talking about. So that's all. And we were all very polite about it. We all had polite discussions. He's the president. You treat him with respect. But then you kind of go off and go, this ain't getting any better. So, yeah. You just have those moments of interaction and discussion. Like I said, sometimes he's on, making some jokes. He's very nice. And sometimes he's just not in the conversation that you're trying to have.
One of the things that has come out ever since the debate on June 27th was Republicans saying that Democrats have been a part of this cover-up, protecting this president. You had interactions with him in February where you say he was off. Should you and other governors have come out and say it as well? Or were you holding it back because you want to keep him on the ticket so you guys can try to beat him in November?
I've been saying this for 15 months that he's.
But the specifics, but the specifics of, but the specifics
I don't know who's been
of
louder
the meeting.
than me.
Yeah, but the specifics of the meeting,
What's
where
that?
you say the specifics of the meeting that, you were saying that he should go, but the specifics of the meeting that were behind closed doors that you could have shared before now.
Okay, I had like 1 or 2 meetings with the president behind closed doors with other governors in the past year. The guy has 5 meetings a day. The Democrats, Pelosi, Schumer, talk to this guy constantly. They know exactly what's going on. And it's their job to kind of talk to the media and have the media tell the real story. He's been interviewed by the media. He can barely keep up with these interviews. Guys, this is not a new story. This isn't a surprise. If you're saying that we should have told America earlier that the president had cognitive issues, what have you been watching for the past 2 or 3 years? Everyone in America sees it. That's why they don't want him on the ballot. It was the media and the Democrat establishment that refused to acknowledge what we were already seeing. So, no, you guys are apparently the last ones in the media to get the memo. We've 350 million Americans have been watching this slow demise, this very tough story for Joe Biden and his family play out for the past 3 years.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, we don't get as much access as you guys do to him behind closed doors. So,
but you don't
those
need
kind of
the
moments
access.
that you're talking
Everyone's
about,
been
we wouldn't have seen it.
No. What? Wait, whoa. This guy's been having cognitive issues outside of closed doors in the public for years. If you're saying that you haven't seen that, I don't know what you guys are watching. I mean, I've had a couple meetings with a guy, but that shouldn't surprise anybody. I'm just repeating that what has happened behind closed doors is exactly what America has already seen. So if you guys don't want to acknowledge it, that's on you. And the Democrat Party, really, the Democrat establishment, they know. This isn't a new thing. Nancy Pelosi didn't watch the debate and go, wow, I'm shocked that he couldn't answer the questions. She knew. They knew exactly that they were just hoping for the best and that he'd get through an hour. But a debate is really the interview you do for the job with the American public. That's what the debate is. Unscripted, unprompted, no teleprompters, no set questions. Here it is. You got to be your best on your feet. That's an interview. Would anybody, for any job in America, hire Joe Biden after that interview? No, literally for not to even work at the hardware store. So the fact that all of a sudden we're going to stay with him, which what everybody already saw, we're going to stay with him to be president of the United States. No way. And that's why they're having this moment of crisis. This was self-created by the Democrat Party and liberal media that they knew. You guys knew. Everyone saw it. This shouldn't be a shock.
Yeah. I want to move on. You talked about Vice President Kamala Harris and the possibility of her being at the top of the ticket and this kind of changing the race. How should Republicans, how should the RNC be preparing themselves to run against Vice President Kamala Harris?
Yeah, so that's a great point. I wouldn't do the Trump-Harris poll. Those polls right now are not as meaningful as messaging, on wording, on branding. That's why I say, you got to find a Frank Luntz and someone of that ilk that understands the value of branding, wording, messaging, how they would recharacterize this. It's not going to be over a policy or just an individual. It's going to be over the brands of the party, if you will, as they emerge and kind of redefine themselves. Where the Republican Party is today is actually quite different than where it was just 3 months ago, in terms of being unified, in terms of being focused, in terms of being issue-driven. Where the Democrat Party, I believe, will be a month from now is very different than today. It won't be about Joe Biden. It'll be about, I think, a younger, more energetic. They still have a lot of problems on issues and a lot of problems on policy, but that doesn't necessarily close the deal in November. So I'd be kind of testing out the brands and the messaging that potentially comes from that. I think if Kamala Harris does become the nominee, and I think she's the only choice potentially, she would be smart to pick a governor, probably someone from the East Coast to complement her on the West Coast. Someone that has a bit of a different tact and style in politics as she does to kind of bring that complementary ticket there. That could be a strong potential ticket that just surprises and re-energizes the party just as you're hitting the election. So it's that kind of messaging and branding that I would be testing and kind of sifting out right now and seeing how what works going against that type of new image that they have an opportunity to tap into if they have the courage to do it.
Yeah. Governor, I hear Republicans often mispronouncing Vice President Kamala Harris's name. You've done it a few times. Is it a tactic, or do you guys, is it just a tough name to pronounce?
I'm not, no, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, I apologize. I say Kamala Harris. I'm honestly telling you, I wouldn't disrespect someone by pronouncing their name wrong. You say it.
Kamala. L-A. Yeah,
oh, okay,
Kamala. Like
Kamala. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a couple of different ways to say it. That
okay, Kamala. I'll go with. Sorry.
Nope.
No, I don't think anyone
It's not my
intentionally
name.
pronounces her name. No, that's no. No one intentionally pronounces her name. I don't think. I apologize if I was. Kamala. I'll stick with Kamala.
No worries. How would the GOP react if Dems changed the ticket? Would they call it unfair, shenanigans? Would they call it cheating? We've been seeing and hearing from some folks that they would even want to try to sue. I don't know who they're going to sue, but try to sue to keep Joe Biden on the ticket. Would you consider it cheating?
No, it's not cheating, but it's not democratic, right? No one will have actually voted for her. If it's Kamala, then I think. Look, she's the vice president. She's the number 2. She's been on the ticket. Technically, she would be the one to step up. So if they went with somebody other than the vice president, that might be a stronger argument to make. If Gavin Newsom tried to jump in and no one has ever voted for Gavin Newsom, that would be a bit strange. But it's really only Kamala or and somebody else at this point. So I think those arguments would probably fall short. It's and I can see people being frustrated, but the Democrat Party has a process. They're going to follow a process if that comes to be. As long as they're following their own rules, they can make their rules, and as long as they follow them, that's it. And at the end of the day, those arguments would be, I think it'd just be a waste of time, energy, and money on the Republican side. If they make the switch out and she's on top of the ticket, she's on top of the ticket. You're not going to win any legal battles on that one.
Yeah. If you were talking to Vice President Kamala Harris, would you give what running mate would you pick for her?
What running mate would I pick for her?
Yeah.
I'm not going to pick Kamala Harris as running mate.
You don't want to give her no advice?
The one I think I could beat the easiest. How about that? The one that I could beat the easiest.
We'll talk offline.
From her point of view, I mean, yeah, if the Democrat Party wants to make me a strategist, I always say that no one knows how to beat Chris Sununu like Chris Sununu. I wish the Dems would pay me. But I'm always partial to governors in an executive leadership role. She does not have real leadership experience, and I think if she chose a governor, I think that would send a positive message. But again, I wish it was Joe Biden. I hope they stick with Joe Biden because I think he's going to be really easy to beat, and I think it helps the Republican Party up and down. I'm just trying to be a realist and kind of tap into the reality of what might come. I'm a strong believer, especially as a governor, you hope for plan A, but you better be ready with plan B, C, and D, and Republicans just need to be ready on that side.
Yeah. One of the things that we've seen around here and have been a big topic of conversation is this idea of everyone needing to tone down the rhetoric after what happened on Saturday. And I'm curious if you believe that both parties need to, right? You're a governor in the Republican Party, so I'm only going to ask you to, clean up your own house. But how should the Trump campaign and Republicans up and down the ticket and around the country be changing the way they talk about their opponents on the Democratic side?
Yeah. So I'll say on the Republican side, I think a lot of it will bear out tonight, right? To see where the president's speech goes. I think it's about unity, not of the unity of his base or something like that, or just even unity of the Republican Party. That's done. He's done that. He's done that very well. And him and J.D. Vance, I think, bring a very interesting ticket that brings a lot of people together within the party. The former President Trump now has to talk about the unity of America. And it's in the tone. It's in allowing, I think the best way to do that is embrace the individual. We're not coming with big government solutions as Republicans. We believe in the states. We believe in individual rights. We believe that a local control and local voices have more power, right? And by doing that, you actually bring the temperature down. Things get heated when it's just in Washington and just in the media because you're pulled away from your constituents. You're pulled away from the real interaction with real people that are just trying to live their lives. The more you return control and empowerment to that individual, the more it gets normal. I'll bring an example up. In New Hampshire, we believe very strongly in local control. It's that live free or die thing we got here. And the most powerful meetings we have are town meeting. And at a town meeting, you go and you're sitting there arguing with your neighbor. I'm arguing with my brother who lives down the road. We're going at it on all these different issues. But at the end of the day, we're neighbors, right? We walk out, we have our discussions. Our kids are at the bus stop together the next day. And by keeping things local, you can still have heated, tough discussion, but you're all a community. By keeping things big with big government, it keeps things polarized. So I think the opportunity, at least on the Republican side, is to talk about returning empowerment, decision-making to the individual, to states, to local communities. And that in itself, I think, brings a little more confidence into the system and lets people want to engage more in a much more positive way.
Yeah. Are you not worried that the horse has left the barn or the train has left the station or whatever idiom you'd like to use on that in this country, right? Like, we're all on social media, we're all talking to people in the way that people speak to each other. Does it feel like most people, I think, don't understand or see how we could go back to kind of the idea of civility in our politics?
Well, I'll say this, look at states, and I'm not just talking about myself, but and when you talk about government, the most trusted politicians are governors. They're your local leaders. They're people that they have more connection with their brand and what they want to do. The people of Mississippi believe in the governor of Mississippi. The people of California, at least temporarily, believe in the California and here. And we can have that discussion. And if we're not doing a good job, there's more accountability at a local level. Now, when you get to the national politics, there's three things that are causing the real problem on the national side. They need term limits, because too many of them overstay their welcome. They need campaign finance reform, because they could be too extreme, raise money on that extremism without ever getting anything done, right? I could give you a handful of House members on both sides that raise millions of dollars, yet have never passed a single bill in history, right? So you need campaign finance reform that doesn't incentivize it. Gerrymandering, and that's a tough one because gerrymandering is really done on the state level, but gerrymandering is a problem. It has made less, what was 150 independent House seats, that could go back and forth, closer to more like 50 or 60 that get fought for in any given cycle. So those three things can be fixed, and if we have the courage to do it, you can get back to more of a checks and balance, a natural checks and balance, less of a us versus them type mentality. And at the end of the day, that just gets more done for America.
Governor, about 5 months ago, you were at our Governor Summit in Washington, D.C. We did an interview similar, but you were here. That was great. Next time you have to come back. You said it won't be Donald Trump's party forever. It just won't. At some point, Donald Trump won't be here forever. But looking around as we've been the last 4 days, his choosing of J.D. Vance, who seems to be a MAGA heir apparent, it seems like it will be his party for at least another decade or so, at the very least. Were you were right about you say you were right about the Biden thing, but were you wrong about this one?
No. Look, Donald Trump is insanely unique, right? I mean, there's no one like him. There's no one that can replace him. There's no Donald Trump light that's coming through the ranks. J.D. Vance, if Trump were to serve 4 years and J.D. were to come up and want to run and all that, J.D. Vance is J.D. Vance. He's not Donald Trump light. He's not some version of MAGA and all this sort of thing. He's his own person with his own ideas and his own vision for the country, and he would have to talk to the Republicans about that. Trump, whether how long he stays and how long he's around, he's going to be a huge voice in this party, whether as president or post-presidency, whatever it might be. There's no doubting that. But there's no replacing that. So at some point, if and when he's not here, again, there's also a sense of a little bit of fear with the former president. Well, if I don't support him, he might come after me and all that. We saw that with primarying and some of the primary endorsements and stuff. So people were more fearful there sometimes with him and his brand and all of that. But really only he truly carries that brand, right? You're still going to have, kind of the ultra-conservatives, the anti-government people, the more moderate folks. We still have a huge spectrum within the Republican Party. That's a good thing, by the way. It's a really good thing, because we're still all Republicans. We all agree on a lot of the basics, of 80%, 90% of the policies we want to see. We can agree and solidify around that. But Trump's his own thing, even that kind of floats above that. He has ideas that I would say are not very conservative. They're just of his brand, right? I don't think he's a great fiscal conservative. I think he borrows too much money. I think he believes in debt too much. I've always had this issue with that. But that's okay. JD or whoever comes up after that as a leader in the party, they're going to have their own ideas, and they're going to push that. So no, every individual, and when it comes to politics, even on the national stage, has to be themselves. They have to drive their brand and what they're about. So no, I don't think it's a problem per se. It's just kind of the reality of the Republican Party. But the good news for Republicans is, even with Donald Trump, who, again, I ran pretty hard. I tried to get Nikki to be the nominee. But with Donald Trump up there, he's beat a lot of my expectations, a lot of other folks' expectations, in his ability to unite this party and ultimately unite the country. That's undeniable. And what you're witnessing this week in Milwaukee, a lot of us never saw that coming, but let's give him credit where credit is due. He deserves it. He and JD have done a very good job talking about a unification of the party, bringing the temperature down across America, and finally getting stuff done that Americans want to see, actually dealing with inflation, dealing with the border, dealing with these everyday issues that too many of our communities are burdened with.
When you think about a possible second Trump administration, who are the top names for you that he should bring in? You know, have you talked to Nikki Haley and asked her if she'd return to a Trump administration? Would you serve in a Trump administration if he asked? I don't know that he would, but if you did.
Well, no, yeah, well, I'm just looking for a job in the private sector. I'll send everyone in the crowd resumes after this interview. So I'm not looking to stay in public life per se.
Yeah.
Look, to be honest, Governor X, Governor Y, and Governor Z, you know, when you talk about secretaries in the cabinet, those are CEOs. Those are executive decisions. That's kind of the buck stops here type decisions, especially when they're looking at policy, not just implementation of the law, but, you know, creating and driving out a lot of the policies that come out of those. Hopefully minimizing the policies, hopefully getting rid of a lot of the bureaucracy, having the courage to balance budgets within those agencies to help the president create a more balanced budget to get out of this debt crisis that we're in, things of that nature. Governors know how to do that, right? Virtually every governor has a balanced budget amendment in their state, right? They have to live by the dollars. They have to find good people. They have to demand a better return for the taxpayer dollars in. So that type of executive leadership would do him very, very well. And so I could list about 15 Republican governors that would be wonderful in the administration, and I'd hope it'd go out and find them, as well as some folks in the private sector. That's okay. Folks in the private sector, though, have to understand that there is a government process. You can't run the government like a business. I'd like to, but you really can't, because it's not our money, right? It's your money. It's the taxpayers' money. So there is a checks and balance process there. But again, executive level leadership out of the private sector can also be very, very useful.
Yeah. Last question. Obviously, you're not here in person. Any reason why you're not at your party's convention in person? Should we read into that?
Yeah, I mean, no. Just look, I'm a governor. It's kind of a 24/7 thing. I was asked to do a lot of media, which I love doing.
Brian Kemp was here.
You know,
I talked to him on Tuesday.
And to be honest, I think. Yeah, well, look, I got to say, I just think Milwaukee's a tiny town, and I didn't want to sit in traffic and security and deal with all the hassle of it more than anything. It sounds like it's been a fun convention, a lot of great energy out there. That's all terrific, but I could be just as useful about having conversations here as anywhere else. So no, I just decided it wasn't worth the trip.
All right. Governor Sununu, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Be good. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you. And thank you all very much. Thank you.